Welcome back to Loftside Bantr, and on today's show we're going to talk about the NCAA transfer portal and NIL program and what it means for the game and for March Madness in particular. We'll take a look at the Elite 8 matchups as there are 8 teams left in the NCAA tournament. Some coaching changes in the NCAA. We'll look into opening day of baseball, and we'll talk about some exciting news for the show, for the brand, and for everything else that is Loftside Bantr. Hello and welcome back to Loftside Bantr. This is your host, Andrew Diamantopoulos. And over this week, obviously, we've had a lot of discussion with the NIL, or the transfer portal, in college basketball. Now, for those of you that don't know what NIL is, the NIL stands for name, image, likeness. The money that are now getting paid to college athletes to use their advertising and everything else like that. So wherever the money's coming from, whether it's advertisers or boosters or anything else like that, it's a way to get these athletes paid, which came around 2019 is when California passed a state law stating that athletes need to be paid for the NIL, and then overall July 1st, 2021 was when the NIL went into effect countrywide. Now, the question that has been going around all sports media and everything else is the NIL killing March Madness? And what they mean by that is, if you look at this year's tournament, it's been very chalky. Chalk is you just write in the top seeds. They're guaranteed to go through. The Elite 8 right now has all 4 number 1 seeds, 3 number 2 seeds, and 1 third seed. Typically, in the earlier rounds, you get quite a bit of upsets. Maybe not a ton, but you get some double-digit seeds going through, a 12 seed, a 13 seed, and some of them make a run into the Sweet 16, and we didn't have any of that. The highest seed we had left was a number 10 seed, which was Arkansas, coached by John Calipari, which, if anybody knows college basketball, it's not really any upset, especially where they came from the SEC. So, of course, where there's not a lot of madness in March Madness, and when there's not a lot of upsets, you start to look at some reasons maybe why that might be. The first thing people are going to bring up, and they have brought up, is the NIL program and the transfer portal. So, first and foremost, the transfer portal opened last Monday. The tournament's still going on, which is crazy to me. That teams are having to still play in a tournament, still look at all this information as far as NIL and transfer portal, and then there are players actually changing teams while the season is still going on. On the first day of the transfer portal, over 500 players entered on Monday alone. Since then, we're now over 1,000. I don't have a definitive number. What I can tell you is the NCAA allows each of its 352 full-member basketball programs to hand out 13 scholarships, totaling 4,576 scholarship athletes a year. With over 1,000 players entering that portal, that would be over 22% of the eligible scholarship recipients looking for a new home. Now, for the scholarship athletes for a mid-major school or lower-end school, Norfolk State was a 16 seed this year. Their head coach came out and said, we're just a glorified JUCO program. We're here to develop kids. They're going to play well, then they're going to go find money at a bigger school. You have athletes looking for $2 to $3 million right now. And I will never begrudge anybody for going out and finding money and getting paid for the skills that they have. That's my hope with this podcast, is that I start to get paid for doing something like this. I mean, the timing of all this is terrible, where the Sweet 16 just played the last 2 nights, and we're 3 days into the transfer portal. There's already a kid that has transferred to Michigan who played last night. Now, obviously, he didn't play for the team last night, but we've already had players transfer to teams that are still playing. Dick Vitale, not a fan of this happening at this time. So the timing of it and the schedule has to change. That's the first and foremost problem with this. We knew the money would be there for the bigger programs. That was never in question from the beginning. And as I said, I'm not begrudging anybody for going out and getting money now, because not everybody makes it to the NBA. So if you can get paid to play college basketball, they use your likeness and everything else like that, make your money. That's fine. The one thing that's going to be a problem is teams like UC San Diego that made the tournament this year, teams like Norfolk State that made it, McNeese, Akron, teams like that go out and recruit players that maybe are overlooked by other teams. They bring them in, they play really well, and then all of a sudden, now they have an opportunity to go play somewhere else. They're being offered an opportunity to go make more money somewhere else, and now these mid-major teams are going to lose the talent that they've developed within their team setting. It's very easy to get a kid, recruit them, but it's hard to maintain, to retain them, as Robert Jones, the head coach of Norfolk State, just said. Same guy that said they're just a glorified JUCO program, or a junior college program. There's nothing stopping the Dukes, the Carolinas, Maryland, Florida, Auburn from going out and poaching these kids from smaller programs. Of the 16 teams that were in the Sweet 16 this past week, only one team had a full starting five of players that started at that school. There are some teams that didn't have any. They were all transfers in from somewhere else. So, are we going to start seeing the death of the mid-major and the death of madness in March with this tournament because all those players are going to be going to bigger schools? This year, we just didn't have it. We didn't have those teams that really went out and were able to beat the big programs because they're losing those kids. So, how is this going to actually affect the sport when it comes to March? I can tell you this year it had one of the highest ratings it's had in years. So not a lot of people cared. There was still a lot of people watching. It's just, I don't know. I don't know how long this is going to be sustainable for. I know the schedule can't be sustainable. I think there are other rules that need to be put in place. I don't think the NIL and I don't think the transfer portal are bad things. I don't. I think the sport needs to clean up those things. Like I mentioned before, a different set of rules maybe need to be in place. It definitely shouldn't be started now. I definitely don't think that the transfer portal needs to happen during the tournament. It's something that takes away from the kids that are still in it. We had a coach, Kevin Willard from Maryland, who just got knocked out in the Sweet 16, who clearly seems to be the favorite to go coach at Villanova, already talking in all of his press conferences about how he doesn't have certain things that other big programs have. And then he was demanding it from Maryland. Well, now it took absolutely away from the game-winning shot that Derek Queen hit. It absolutely took away from the kids that made it to the Sweet 16. So, all this stuff needs to stop. As relevant to the timing of all this. I think we change the timing of it. I think we need to limit the number of transfers. If you're a student that's going out and going to 4 teams in 4 years, I don't think that's right of you. There's no loyalty really in any of this. There's no anything else. And again, I'm not going to begrudge you if you're going to go out for more money. I can't begrudge you for that. I think there's got to be a limit of maybe 2 transfers. Maybe. Now, there should be some other things included into that, which is a medical issue where you get hurt and you're going to another team to start or something like that if you lost your starting position. If your coach leaves, I think maybe there should be something in there about that. Either you need to follow your coach to somewhere, which some players have done in this transfer portal already, or you don't fit into the system of the new coach. I get all of that stuff will have an effect on you. So those are the things that we have to kind of look into and decide whether or not rule should be in place. But, you know, the people that are going to 3 teams in 3 years or transferring someplace, like, you got to be able to just take the money out of it and understand what's the best situation for you. You know, going to a team, transferring to a team that's offering you the most money, you may not fit their system. And now you're sitting on the bench and you're not making as much of an impact that you want. Some players transfer from smaller schools to bigger schools so they get more exposure. Completely understand that. The problem is, I think decisions are being made rashly, and then they're going to one team to the next. Like, we're going to have a kid, I'm a Boston College fan, Josh Beadle and Dion Brown, two players that came in. Beadle came from Clemson, who had a great year this year. Dion Brown came from UMBC. They both transferred here. They both didn't really get the minutes, or the season didn't really go as well as they wanted them to. So now they're going to go to their third team in 3 years. Was it an idea that they were coming here and getting money? Or did they actually think they were going to fit the system? I don't know, because obviously I'm not privy to the recruiting tactics of Boston College. I'd love to talk to them and see kind of what they look for in players. But I don't know. So those are the two kind of caveats that I want to look at when it comes to the transfer portal. Speaking of the coaching changes in college basketball, we had quite a few different changes. Some I really like the move to, some I'm questioning, I guess, would be the two various ends of the spectrum. There were 43 coaches that went out. There's 32 that have been hired in. Let's take a look at some of them. Let's see. Indiana moved on from Mike Woodson and hired Darren DeVries, who is the head coach at West Virginia. Obviously, West Virginia was kind of at that point where they were left out of the tournament, and people had looked at, Tucker DeVries, Darren's son, was injured, and that's what helped keep them out, comparative to North Carolina. Well, Darren DeVries goes to Indiana. Tucker DeVries enters the transfer portal and goes right to Indiana with his father. That, again, makes sense. Don't have a problem with that. But Darren DeVries to that. Ben McCollum, who is the Drake head coach, obviously won a game against Missouri this year in the tournament. He goes to Iowa, and a couple of Drake players have already committed to Iowa. I believe the number one player in the transfer portal was Bennett Sturtz, Stirtz. I hope I get it right. Point guard from Drake, already committed to Iowa. Follows his coach. Obviously knows he's going to fit the system. Yes, he's going to get better exposure, and he's probably going to make more money. All of that makes sense. Next, we had Niko Nedved, who was the Colorado State head coach. He's going to the University of Minnesota. As for those of you watching the tournament, Colorado State lost to Derek McQueen's last-second bank shot against Maryland. So they were leading 71-70. Derek Queen makes this amazing shot, which was the best moment of this tournament so far. The most madness, if you will. And he's being replaced by Ali Faroukhamanesh. Now, Ali Faroukhamanesh was a hero for Northern Iowa when they made their run in the NCAA tournament a few years ago. That was 2010, I believe. He was the associate head coach for Colorado State, and now he's the head coach there. I love that hire. Absolutely love that hire. Was an up-and-comer. He's obviously got a name that people recognize within the college basketball community. I think he's going to continue to have Colorado State moving forward. Now, if they can keep people within that team that was the hottest team going into the tournament, obviously only lost by a last-second shot, I think hiring him keeps your kids there. Hopefully. I'd like to see that team back next year in the tournament. Sean Miller, who was the head coach at Xavier, it was the second go-around at Xavier, took over the job at Texas. And with that move, Richard Pitino, not Rick Pitino, Richard, his son, was the head coach at New Mexico, is now the head coach at Xavier. So now you got two Pitinos within the Big East. Interesting kind of layout there. The coaching movements obviously have a big part of the NIL and transfer portal again, with Richard Pitino leaving New Mexico. New Mexico star point guard Donovan Dent entered the transfer portal. He was considered the second best player in the transfer portal, and now he's going to UCLA. So UCLA played New Mexico this year, so they got a good look at him. Mick Cronin, the head coach of UCLA, which had an epic press conference after losing, and how he wasn't really thinking about anything else other than how shitty the flight home was from the East Coast. If you remember, UCLA now plays a lot of East Coast teams because they're part of, again, a conference realignment that I don't think makes any sense. But again, money-based, of course. Some interesting things have also come up from this NCAA tournament. St. Francis won their way into the tournament with a losing record, played as a 16 seed, a play-in team, lost on a last-second shot in one of those 16-seeded play-in games. They're going to be moving to Division III. The school has said, we just don't have the ability to keep up with NIL and be able to do any of these things. It's more profitable for us to be a Division III school. So a team that made the tournament is now going completely out of Division I basketball, which shouldn't be something to happen. Obviously, the NCAA wants to grow its Division I teams. I'm sure they have a team that would be willing to take their place. But the University of Hartford did the same thing. They made the tournament once. They've decided right when NIL started that it wasn't for them, and they have moved to Division III, where now scholarships and stuff like that are. I don't believe Division III even offers scholarships. They're taking their basketball program completely out of the mix for all this stuff, which is, again, an interesting business decision. It's sad to see a little bit. Now, again, not a huge St. Francis fan. Don't really know a ton about their team, but it just seems like, this is what they're going to have to do. A lot of these smaller schools are going to have to do this. BYU with their NIL money, and they're a sneaky team that has a lot of NIL money. Just keep that in mind, people. AJ DeBansta, now he went to Utah Prep, wanted to stay close to home. Again, BYU's not typically that team that's spending that type of money for a player. So, again, they went to the Sweet 16 this year. They're going to have the number one recruit in the nation. A lot of people seem to think that even being number one, he was going to go to some other team, a Duke, a Kansas, an Arkansas with Coach Cal, Arizona. Utah was even an option. He's originally from Brockton, Massachusetts, so not necessarily staying close to home with going to BYU, but he was at Utah Prep this past year. So he said he likes the coaching staff. I'm not going to get into his religious beliefs, but he said that didn't have anything to do with it, that he really liked BYU's coaching staff. Creighton has made a splash in the transfer portal, getting Iowa's Owen Freeman, who was the center that played there last year. So Creighton, again, not a team that's going normally getting those big-time players from big-time programs, but they made a splash with that. I'm very interested to hear what people have to say about how this looks. Again, the ratings didn't suffer this year. It just seems like we're getting ready for the time period where those bigger schools, they're going to make this sport top-heavy. This seems like the first year that a lot of people are really noticing that. We'll shift gears a little bit. We'll take a look at baseball, America's pastime. As Marina said in one of our previous episodes, or the previous episode, that is the notion that America is still, or baseball is America's pastime. It's clearly football now. Just going to say that. I've taken a look at a lot of the experts, quote-unquote, opinions on where teams are going to finish. I know I've done kind of a Red Sox preview a few episodes ago. Red Sox are getting a lot of votes to go in a World Series, which I find a little surprising. Now, baseball opened a couple of days ago, and the Red Sox won Game 1. They lost last night. And just so we're clear, for the whole controversy with Rafael Devers and the Red Sox playing DH or third base, he wanted to play third base. Just so we're clear, he's 0 for 8 to start the season with 7 strikeouts. Not good enough. Not good enough. So I'm a little wary about that. And again, I live in the area where I hear nothing but Red Sox talk, so that's where my opinions come in for that. But Dodgers, I think, are going to win 1 billion games. They only play 182, but they're going to win 1 billion of them. they just have a top to bottom roster that is crazy. The only thing that's going to keep them from really competing for another World Series is injuries. The teams that are competing with them in that National League West division, the Padres and the Diamondbacks, I don't think they're anywhere close to the Dodgers as far as talent-wise. The Diamondbacks played pretty well last year, so I think that'd be the closest one that they have. The Padres always have high expectations and never seem to meet them. Can they put it all together? Who knows? I think the Braves and the Phillies are the two that really are the biggest threats to the NL pennant for the Dodgers. I think the AL is a little bit more wide open. I just don't see a team that's so good that's going to run away with anything. Everyone thought it would be the Yankees again. They've gone through quite a few injuries, and yes, they're still going to be there. They're still going to compete for the AL East. They're definitely, I think, going to get into the playoffs. But do they run away with it? I don't think so. The Astros, not as good as they used to be. The Rangers have some talent. Obviously, people are saying the Red Sox. The Tigers, a lot of people are high on. The Twins. The Guardians could sneak in there from the Central. There's one unanimous decision that the White Sox are still going to suck. Sorry, Chicago. The Mets went out and got Juan Soto this offseason. So, does he make a difference with the Mets? Are they able to get over the hump and get into the World Series and maybe win one? There's just a whole bunch of things that are up there. The Orioles in the AL East with the Yankees and the Red Sox are the three teams that are going to battle it out for that. I think whoever doesn't win the AL East, at least one of those teams is going in as a wild card. I just think the Dodgers have too much talent. And the way that they're doing it and the way that they're getting contracts with deferred payments, look, I question it as well. I don't think it's the right thing for baseball to continue to allow to happen. But what can we do about it? It's not against the rules. It sucks that that's the way a team is going to put together this amazing roster and that they're going to be paying out players for the next umpteenth years. But it is what it is. That's the rule. You can do that. So we'll see if the Red Sox has put together a good enough rotation to compete. I still think their offense is a little lacking. I think that there's a lot of optimism in this city. The prices of tickets have gone up, so that should tell you everything that you need to know. But baseball, as I've gotten a little older, I want to watch it a little bit more, simply because it's slower for me. And there's nothing like a good nap during a baseball game or a golf game on TV. As I've gotten older, I've realized that I can watch these things a little bit more. I don't need the fast pace, go. And baseball doesn't care if I take a nap during their games. They get the ratings if it's on my TV. So they don't care. I do like that the games have sped up. I do like that, I'm not necessarily for the pitch clock. It's kind of weird to me. But I do like that it's sped up a little bit. So if you're at the game, you're not sitting there for 4 hours and then fighting traffic for another 2. So baseball is back in America, opening day. Obviously, we've had a few games. We haven't had opening day here in Boston. That comes up in the first week in April. But some of the things I want to touch on now as far as the show is concerned. So I've made some steps to really kind of put this in the limelight. And I've gotten a lot of positive responses. Some feedback, which I'm always grateful for as well. I've mentioned that each and every episode pretty much. We do have a website now. It's loftsidebantr.com. It is very early on. It is very, very basic right now, but it helps everybody get to all of the different places you can listen to the show. iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcast, RSS.com, all those different places, or YouTube. All those different places are now on one page for you to be able to go out and find. So I'm very grateful that I was able to put something like that together. We are going to clean up kind of and tighten what Loftside Bantr is. We do still want to do a gaming section of this show. I am on Twitch as Disillusioned Gamer. I play with a friend of mine, Industrial Gamers, who will be the person that we kind of go through kind of what the big news in gaming is. We are eventually looking to branch out some of these things. I think Loftside Bantr eventually will just turn into a sports-only podcast. We'll mix in a whole bunch of different other things. I like having people on that will be business owners that want to talk to us. I still do want to do things like that. I think there will eventually be a podcast that will be the gaming aspect and the movie and TV aspect, pop culture, if you will. It's going to take time. So we're going to keep it here for now. We're going to do this kind of jumble of things. And I eventually want people to be able to branch out to the things that they want to listen to. We're still early on. I've had probably 1,000 listens over this first month, which is much bigger than I thought it would be. I obviously would love to have 10,000 listens, but this all takes time. So one of the big things that this podcast is going to be a part of this upcoming year is something called Fantasy Turf War, which is fantasyturfwar.com. I applied and was invited to play in this 64-team fantasy football kind of revolutionary way to play it. It says here, 64 teams, 64 contenders compete head-to-head, squaring off against each other in single fantasy football league. The big thing for us is we're going to contribute to Fantasy Turf War throughout the season. We're going to contribute to what they want from us and be able to talk about that on here, invite a lot of the players that are playing onto this podcast, and this is going to be part of the marketing that goes forward with this. I'm very excited about this. I was very grateful that when I kind of applied to it, they were very inviting, and I cannot wait to compete in this and have everybody come on, me go on there, and help each other kind of grow as both creators and business owners. This is something that I think is going to be very beneficial. I would love to be able to do this. I can tell you now, already more than 1 year. So we're going to see how we do this year. The 64 teams are broken down into 4 divisions, much like the NCAA tournament. The league is broken down in those 4 divisions of 16 teams. Each division operates within its own bubble, and with each having their own set of player data to operate with, each division will draft independently. At the end of the regular season, week 14, the top 2 teams in each division will be seeded into a bracketed playoff. Each playoff game is single elimination. The championship goes to week 17. Pretty cool to me that you're going to get all this done, and then you're going to be able to still compete against other teams that probably have similar players to you. Again, that's fantasyturfwar.com. I'm sure there's still some spots open. It would be a good thing to go and ask. They have a contact. There's a whole bunch of different social medias that they're on. So definitely something that I'm very excited to be a part of. And again, hopefully is really great marketing going forward for the podcast itself. And we can continue to grow. On YouTube, we had a lot of great positive responses to the last episode with Marina Dickey, and we are looking to have her back on with another facet of a player that she is, or whatever her growing list of her resume is. So we're looking to record that next Friday. We're going to do another crew kind of morning podcast recording coming up. And then, like I said, I know any sort of gamers or people that are waiting for the gaming content for this, it is coming. There is a lot of different discussions between myself and Industrial Gamers, and again, we stream quite a few times a week. Wednesdays we do Fortnights with some other friends. We do a lot of Marauders content. We are going to branch out into some other games, but this week it's Marauders weekend, so we'll be doing that quite a bit. I really hope that the stream that I did just now, I've actually been streaming this whole time as I've been making this, and I get some people coming in here or there, a few comments here, but it's been really great so far. Again, I'm trying to change kind of a career, kind of make a move to something that I went to school for, and this has been really exciting for me so far. So I appreciate all the support. I really do hope to continue to grow, have more people on, and we've been reaching out to athletes and everything else, trying to get interviews, and we're working on it. Wow, we reached out to the Massachusetts Pirates, or an arena football team. So hopefully trying to put that together for an interview as well. Again, I can't thank you enough. Please check out Fantasy Turf War. Please check out the podcast on anything you can possibly think of. Apple Podcasts, YouTube, loftsidebantr.com. The email address is on there, loftsidebantr@gmail.com. Good luck to the final 8 teams remaining in the NCAA tournament. It's almost over, so enjoy it while you can. These are going to be some great matchups coming up. Wherever you are, good morning, good afternoon, good night. Enjoy the rest of your day, rest of your time. See you later.